Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Cooper, and if there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's that no relationship ever falls apart all at once. People like to believe there's this one moment that shatters everything, but that's not how it works. Relationships don't explode, they erode. They break down slowly, piece by piece, until one day you look around and realize you're living with a stranger. It starts with silence, then comes the distance, then the disrespect, and finally, the detachment. That cycle, it's real, and I lived through it. I know that sounds heavy, and believe me, it is. Because when my wife brought her lover into my own house, I realized we had hit rock bottom. That was the moment I knew without a doubt she had to go. But things weren't always like this. In fact, there was a time when life with her felt full, exciting, even beautiful. And I want to take you back to that beginning, to when things actually made sense. Because if I'm going to tell you how it all fell apart, you deserve to know how it all began. I first met Lydia, the woman who became my wife many years ago when I moved into a newly built apartment complex. I had just relocated to the area, and to be honest, I didn't know anyone around. My life at the time was pretty simple, just home and work, with the occasional visits from a few friends who lived in a different part of town, quite far away. I didn't mind it that much. I was used to keeping to myself and working hard. But after a while, the routine of just going to work and coming back home every day started to feel a little too monotonous. So, I decided to change things up. One of the first things I thought about was getting some exercise. I started jogging every morning at 5 a.m., figuring it would be a good way to break free from my usual routine and get to know the neighborhood a bit better. I'd head out early before the city fully woke up, and I'd be back by 6 a.m. The streets were quiet, and it gave me the chance to clear my mind, all while seeing the neighborhood from a different perspective. It felt peaceful, but also gave me a little energy boost for the day ahead. During my morning jogs, there was this one woman I kept seeing every day. She was always out jogging as I was finishing up my run, and honestly, she was hard to miss. She was beautiful in that effortless kind of way. I don't know how to explain it, but I found myself looking forward to those early morning encounters. After running past her a few times, I finally found myself stopping one day. I didn't even think about it much before doing it, but I ended up walking up to her and asking, "Do you stay here?" She smiled, looked a bit surprised, and said, "Yeah, I do." We started talking a little, and honestly, it felt like we had known each other for a lot longer than just a few minutes. I don't even know why, but there was an instant connection. That was when I found out her name was Lydia. After that day, we started seeing each other more often. I adjusted my jogging time so that we could run together, and that's how our friendship began. It was simple at first. Lydia and I would jog side by side, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying the silence. But over time, I found myself thinking about her more, and little by little, our friendship grew into something more. As days went by, our connection became stronger, and eventually, we took the step from being friends to dating. Since we lived so close to each other, I started seeing Lydia almost every day. After work, I'd come home and we'd hang out, and that routine quickly became something I looked forward to. And before I knew it, it wasn't just dating anymore. We started talking about the future, and not long after, we made the decision to get married. In hindsight, I realize now that everything about that time felt perfect. We were happy, we were in love, and things were just easy. At that point, life seemed like it was going exactly how I wanted it to. After Lydia and I got married, I sat her down one quiet evening, thinking it was the right time to tell her something important. I told her I had a child from a previous relationship. I wasn't hiding it out of shame or guilt. I just thought it was something that didn't need to come up immediately since I'd always taken full responsibility. I paid for everything. I visited often. I supported the child's mother even though we were no longer together. In my mind, I had done the honorable thing. But Lydia's reaction blindsided me. The moment the words left my mouth, it was like flipping a switch. She stood up, eyes wide, and just lost it. She accused me of betrayal, said I had tricked her into marrying me. She kept shouting about how she never would have agreed to be with a man who already had a child. I tried to calm her down, but she wasn't hearing any of it. That night changed something. It created a crack between us, and no matter how much I tried to seal it with reason or kindness, that crack never really closed. From then on, every argument we had, even when it had nothing to do with my son, somehow circled back to him. If I forgot to take out the trash, she'd say, "Maybe you're too busy thinking about your other family." If I wanted to go visit him, she'd act like I was choosing someone else over her. It got to a point where I could predict the moment she'd bring it up. Her voice would change, like she was pulling out her favorite weapon. Still, we stayed married 7 years after. That's a long time to keep dancing around a sore spot that never healed. And for those 7 years, Lydia and I never had a child together. I didn't push the issue because she never brought it up. She always brushed it off if the topic came up. "We're good," she'd say. "Let's not stress ourselves." So I left it alone. I thought if she wasn't worried, then I shouldn't be either. I didn't realize at the time that Lydia had already made a silent decision about our future, one that didn't include children, at least not mine. Meanwhile, after my son's mother got married to a new guy, everything changed. This new man made it very clear that he didn't like having my son around. I mean, the man wouldn't even look at him or speak to him unless he was yelling. My son started telling me things during our visits, like how he just didn't feel welcome anymore. I assumed it was just adjustment pains with the new stepfather, but it only got worse. Each time I saw my son, he looked more withdrawn. And every time we spent time together, he would ask me if he could come live with me. At first, I thought he just missed me. But one day, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Dad, can I live with you?" I could see in his eyes that this wasn't just about wanting more time. That was when I knew I had to step in. I went to his mother and asked her to let him stay with me for a while, just until things stabilized. But she said no, without even blinking. She said I was being dramatic, that the boy was fine, and that I should mind my business. I tried to reason with her, told her what my son had told me, but she shut it down fast. That's when I knew I didn't have a choice anymore. I went to court and filed for custody. Let me tell you, it was a nightmare. Lawyers, paperwork, meetings, back and forths that felt like they would never end. She fought back hard, not because she really wanted the child with her, but because she didn't want to lose control. She made claims, twisted stories, tried to paint me like the unstable one. It dragged on for months, but I stayed the course because I knew what I was fighting for. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing this to give my son a chance at peace. Eventually, the court ruled in my favor. They saw the situation for what it was and granted me full custody. I'll never forget the day I brought him home. He smiled more, laughed more, slept better. And even though I was relieved, what I didn't realize at the time was that bringing my son into my home would light a fire under something already broken in my marriage. My wife, who I had hoped would understand and embrace him, didn't take it well at all. I returned home with my son, believing with all my heart that bringing him into my home was the best decision. I honestly thought Lydia, my wife, would understand. I assumed she'd welcome him, maybe even grow to care for him over time. That's what I hoped for. I was wrong. The moment I walked through the door with my son beside me, everything in Lydia's expression changed. She didn't say welcome. Then the questions started flying. Why didn't I tell her I was bringing him to live with us? How could I make that kind of decision without discussing it with her first? She wasn't asking because she wanted to understand. She was attacking. Her voice grew louder and angrier, and before I knew it, we were arguing. I tried to explain, I really did. I reminded her that I had told her about my son after we got married, and that I've always taken responsibility for him. I told her how his living situation had become unsafe, how he wanted to stay with me, how I had no choice. I begged her to see that I wasn't doing this to hurt her, but she didn't want to hear it. Then, in the middle of all the shouting, she dropped something. She screamed, "You brought that boy here without even thinking about me. And I've spent 7 years making sure I never got pregnant because I didn't want this life." At first, I thought I heard her wrong. I was stunned. I asked her to repeat it. What did she mean by that? She rolled her eyes. "It doesn't matter," she said, brushing past me like the whole conversation was a waste of her time. But it did matter. It mattered more than anything she'd ever said to me. For 7 years, I believed we were just waiting for it to happen naturally one day. I never imagined she had been actively preventing it. I felt blindsided. Later, I asked her why she never talked to me about it. Why she didn't feel the need to tell me how she really felt about having children. Her only response was that I had made all the decisions regarding my son on my own. In that moment, I realized I was married to someone who not only didn't want kids, but who also resented me for having one. And now that my son was in our home, who had done nothing wrong, she saw him as a threat, not as family. As months go by, our marriage started to feel like two strangers managing a house together. Conversations shrank to, "Have you paid the light bill?" or "What's for dinner?" I would try to joke with my wife sometimes, ask if she wanted to do something together, but she'd always be too tired or had somewhere to be. And even when she was home, she wasn't really there. Eventually, she found new ways to escape. Yoga retreats, spa weekends with her friends, girls' nights that became whole Saturdays. At first, I tried to be supportive. I told myself maybe she just needed space, that she was adjusting to a life she hadn't signed up for. But the more she drifted away, the more I felt like I was slowly becoming invisible. She became glued to her phone, smiling at her screen, whispering into late-night calls in the kitchen or stepping outside when a certain text came in. I'm not a fool. I knew what I was seeing. It's one thing to lose affection, but it's another to feel replaced. It was clear there was someone else, someone who made her laugh, who made her feel something I hadn't been able to reach in months. But still, I tried. I swallowed my pride and confronted her, not to fight, but to fix things. I told her I was sorry for not telling her about my son before we got married. I told her I still loved her and wanted us to be a family, to build something real and whole again. She just said, "We are living like a family," then stood up and left the room without giving me a chance to respond. That moment broke something in me. I was the only one still trying. For over a year, I kept hoping she'd come back emotionally. I tried everything. Counseling suggestions, date nights, gentle conversations. But nothing worked. I was drained and emotionally battered. I couldn't do it anymore. I had to accept what I didn't want to face. Our marriage was dead, and I was the only one at the funeral. And that's when I knew. It was time to end things, for my sanity, for my son's peace, and maybe even for her freedom. Because no matter how much I once loved her, I couldn't keep fighting alone. The day I made up my mind to file for divorce wasn't loud. I just woke up one morning after another night of her not coming home. I realized I wasn't about to send my son away to keep a failing marriage alive. That boy needed stability, and I couldn't provide that if I kept allowing chaos under my roof. If she wanted out so badly, she could have it, but not on her terms. Filing first might seem like a small thing to some people, but I learned it gives you control. You pick where the case is heard. You get time to sort your finances, gather documents, and structure your story. I researched and made sure to file in a jurisdiction that if I could prove that her behavior, her public disrespect, emotional neglect, and possibly cheating led to the breakdown of the marriage, the law would take that into account. And let me tell you, I had receipts. I spent weeks quietly gathering everything I needed. Photos, messages, videos, times she came home drunk, days she didn't come home at all, even the moments she was dropped off by another man, smelling like liquor and smoke. And while all this was going on, her behavior didn't improve. In fact, it got worse. It was like she thought I'd just accept it because I hadn't reacted yet, probably assuming that I am weak, or she believed I still loved her too much to let her go. Truth is, I did love her, but I wasn't going to let that love destroy my peace. I had a son watching everything. I couldn't teach him to be a man by being a doormat. One Saturday morning, I was sitting in the living room going over some documents when she walked in with a man I'd never seen before. She didn't even introduce him. She just walked up to me, pulled a white envelope out of her bag, dropped it on the coffee table, and said, "Sign the divorce papers and get out." I looked at her. Then I looked at the man. He avoided my eyes. I laughed. After everything, she really thought she could kick me out of my own house. That's when my son, who had been standing silently nearby, looked at her, and said something that stopped everything cold. "Mom, you really don't know?" She frowned. "Know what?" she asked, clearly irritated. I told my boy to go into the study and bring back the books. He came back a minute later with a thick folder tucked under his arm. I opened it up and handed her one of the documents. Her face went white. She had no idea that I had already filed for divorce. No clue that I'd collected enough evidence to make any court question her credibility. She thought she could end things on her own terms. But the look on her face told me everything. She thought walking away from the marriage meant she got to walk away with whatever she wanted. It doesn't work that way. The legal battle that followed wasn't short, but it was revealing. She fought at first, thinking she could still come out on top. But with every passing month, the fees stacked up, the pressure mounted, and she realized I wasn't budging. Eventually, she agreed to a settlement under my terms. Well, let's just say she left with far less than she expected. Even after all that, I wasn't happy. I was just tired. Tired of trying. Tired of carrying everything while being blamed for everything. Tired of asking myself why she hated kids so much, or why she couldn't just tell me from the start that she never wanted one. Maybe I should have been upfront about my son when we met. I'll own that. But I'll never understand why she took every chance to reject him like he wasn't worthy of love. Anyway, that's where I'll leave it for now. If you've ever been in a situation like mine, or seen someone go through it, drop a comment. Like, share, and let me know your thoughts. I'll be reading them.